Hello guys, welcome to another market review. We are gonna kick off by looking at NIKKEI. Very interesting chart and coming months for sure on the dollar index. So when June finished, um, we had this monthly breakout, and of course we were favoring dollar longs because you were assuming this 100 region to be able to hold price, and momentum was signaling continuation, right? Or would you think any other thing? So you were expecting, sorry, yeah, you get the point, something like this. But last week we had FOMC meeting and we closed through the level, and this is a weekly bearish engulfing back below this range, inside this range. So why did this fail? I don't know, but it was certainly weird that we couldn't, that it took us so long, really, because we spent a whole month here and we didn't push. So coming into the end of the month, it was weird to think that we were gonna break out then, right? Because if momentum is real, you get a small retest and sometimes you don't even get it, right? I remember first of the month we were considering scenarios like maybe it doesn't even have to dip into the zone and it just kicks off, right? But the whole month turned out to be distribution, and now we're seeing a double top that's closed inside the range with a weekly bearish engulfing. And this tells me one thing, and that thing is that we are not really trending. We are in a range bound environment, and this is just likely to at least come towards the mid of the range with this close that we've had. So that's the bias for August and maybe September, but we'll have to see. So that's the dollar index, and now we're gonna take cover the Euro USD, because what we're seeing now on dollar index is like this. It reminds me of this pattern uh, happened during August and September of 2024, where we made this sort of double top and prices trended towards the other side of the range. And I shall remind you that 2023 and 2024 was just range bound price action. So, I remember whenever price was trading at the extremes, of course, here it looks like a breakout, here it looks like a breakout, but it turned out to be a double top and you just trade back towards the other side. So that's what I think we are seeing on the dollar index, really. And I could also, draw this trend line and signal that, you don't, if we get a bounce and we break below it again, that's a massive trigger for the shorts, and we're gonna trade towards the 98 level. But let's look at the euro and see what it has to offer, because I think the technical analysis we made was pretty spot on, really, because we identified that all this market was doing during the month of July was just trading within the range that was created by the first 2 days. of the month. So we knew that he had swept the July high, and even though people were talking about Dixie to 103 level, 105 level, because I saw this, right? And as I also mentioned, why didn't it break out if it's strong? Instead, it's just holding. Doesn't really look like acceptance. All we did was sweep the previous low of the month, trade back in, and break out of this range. So does that mean we are ready to trend? I'm not sure. I think I wanna really see the first week of the month, because we're gonna start a new month uh, on Monday. I want to see that week develop and have that monthly open. I think that weekly and monthly open is going to be important because it's going to be the same level really. So I'm already trying to think, what am I going to do, right? If the weekly open is around at this level. And all I wanted to see for the month of July really was this, because we had a massive imbalance created here. So I knew that price was more likely to gravitate towards this zone rather than all this chop, whatever this is, right? Easier to move up than to move down. So now we don't really have, well, we created this imbalance, so of course we could trade here and bounce at some point, but for now I think the July high is important. Previous July high, sorry, but you get the idea. This level turned out to be really important, even after we swept the low. We found resistance here, like we did previously. Then we found support. Then we dipped a bit below it and also found support. So you really don't want to see this level be lost. So I think the euro could trend, could certainly move higher, especially because if you look at this as a range, what have we really done, right? Just like we did here and here. We've done this with a longer base. So I think at least you're targeting the mid of the range, which probably is the 98 level on the dollar index. So I favor EURUSD longs. So coming back into this chart, I really don't want to overcomplicate the triggers and what I look for next week, because the bias is what it is, and new month, new opportunities. This weekly and monthly open is going to be really, really important. So this last close looks like a potential reversal. So I'm inclined to think that most likely we're maybe gonna pull back a bit on Monday, and once we reclaim this weekly and monthly open, maybe this is the low of the month in, right? This is why the first week of trading is important, and this is the only trigger I can really think of, just reclaiming that weekly and monthly open. And I think we're going to take out these highs and trade into this zone. We could do that. So that's the view on EURUSD. I could also see the shorts, really, yeah. But maybe later in the week, if we've moved high enough only, right? Or maybe if we lose this level, we break below it, yeah, then maybe I would think that we're gonna trade and feel some of this imbalance, and but then my read on price wouldn't be clear, and that would mean that Dixie would be holding above this level, which I don't think should happen really. So my scenario for the Euro USD probably looks like dollar doing something like this. So it really shouldn't bounce a lot from that level. So that's my view on dollar index and the euro. Gold. Oh my god. This has been just painful to pay attention to, really, because I was expecting a breakout. All we got was this, which is nice. You can make money with this, but I was expecting something bigger, and it was quite disappointing. I don't think there's strength in this market, nor silver. Just look at the difference, right, on the move we had on the euro and what we had on gold. I'm not too sure why this is. I don't know if maybe the long end part of the curve rising signals further rate hikes, and that's what gold is smelling, but I'm not too sure why the euro doesn't behave like this then, if that's the case. So on that divergence of strength, I think gold longs are not worthy, are not worth my time really. I think I even favor the shorts really if we get a decent trigger, because I think this is gonna get washed up at some point. So not too sure what the trigger is gonna look like, but forget this trend line. Maybe we need to draw another one, right, on gold, and then maybe all this wants to do is build even a larger and bigger consolidation, and then it breaks out, and then maybe trade higher. I'm not too sure, but this is like intra-week, intra-month trading, not a big swing, sorry, like the one I wanna get involved in if we trade into the 3.5k level. So that's gold. And here in New Zealand, I wanted to cover it. I marked this level last week as a TP because we wanted to get long, so that worked perfectly from the weekly open. Now mark this daily high, which was the candle that took out May's low and created this move. But it's working as resistance right now, if you look at it. So the market's lost that level, and I mean, I don't see any long here. I think maybe if the market comes into this zone, I could see the long. If you look at the H4, maybe if you mark this candle, maybe we could get something similar, just like we got here, right? And the reasoning is very similar on both. You get a candle followed by a down move, strong down move. And here you get a candle that swept the previous low, and this is not a big impulse right away, but we got this decent move. So again, I could see something similar happening here. Could see price moving into this low, sweeping this level, and it would honestly just be like a small trade, really. Nothing too fancy. Because our high time frame, I really don't have a clue, man. But we are sitting at you know, recent lows. So it doesn't really make sense for me to look for shorts here. If we, however, trade it into this level, here's where I would love to get long, because this was where we broke this channel, trend line, call it whatever, consolidate it, and then we began this massive move. So this zone, interesting for longs on a swing time frame, high time frame perspective. For shorts, I like this zone here, and if I drop into the H4, you'll see why. It was this previous very clear resistance turn into support, and again we lost that, so I think it should cap price if we get there, but again I don't have a clear read. EURUSD is even more chubby for me, and I honestly don't have a clue, man, about this. So yeah, I'm just gonna step aside because we're sitting just at this mid. So if I see something intra-week, I'll update it next week. But um, you know, we had a found decent resistance at this sorry, I drew this badly. Yeah, decent resistance support there. So we got a nice move from there, nice impulse. I don't see a reason to blindly long this. Maybe if we get below this, I can see the short. Maybe, just maybe. I'm not too confident about that. Uh, if I had to blindly long or short this, maybe long on another sweep or SFP of these lows, or this ones, or pushing towards here for an SFP and a swing short. Until then, you know, it's very like intra-week and very refined, quick in and out trading, and I'm not seeing any clear resistance or support established anywhere here. There's, I would say, the closest resistance we have is the previous monthly open. So maybe holding here could make price push into here, and quite possibly I think it shouldn't stop there. It could maybe push even higher, but we'll see. We'll see. Those are the zones I'm watching on USD, but you know, low confidence for now. USDJPY was something we mapped out as well some time ago. Sorry. We had this rising trend line and impulse above, and the only trigger I had was really once we close below the trend line, I think shorts are back in the game, and that's what happened. This is what we had some intervention, combined intervention, and you know, this is where it was easier for me to join this move. I cannot support intervention at these highs, honestly. So we drew this zone long time ago, and it seems to, I mean, it's where price closed at last week. So very important, because if we hold below, I think at least you're gonna see 155, or maybe even around here 153. But you know, it's like always, whenever there's intervention, like, is it gonna last? Is it gonna reverse? or is this a real trend or structural change, right? So we've got decent levels. I think I could see a scenario where it sort of finds a bottom here and it grinds up towards higher levels, and from here it distributes again, and then you have the structural change everyone is waiting for. Safe trigger for me though is maybe biggest spike down, hold the level, and maybe here you could look for longs, but you could also clear this zone and then look for longs. Yeah, but you know, very decent levels and zones. We had a lot of resistance here. This is where price found the second leg, and you really want to watch how price behaves around this region really, because it could signal that there's more to come, and that means possibly 153. But you know, yen trading is not my specialty, so that's it. US oil is an interesting one really, because there's a lot of very clear resistance at this level, right? You see support, break below it, and resistance, and we open with a gap. And the trigger I have for joining short was give me a spike above the weekly open, a rejection of that gap, and then I'm short. But we didn't. It was just straight selling off. And I was quite surprised, to be honest, that we had this massive gap. And I wasn't going to jump in short on Friday after we've already moved down, right? So, of course, I want that to happen at the beginning of the week with no downside consumed. So, at the end of the week, we get this, a close back above the weekly open. And I think this signals something for the next month or next week, because it quite possibly means that we're gonna see some upside. We resumed on oil. Possibly this low should hold, if I'm correct. But this is very weird. This is very weird in my opinion. So the next weekly open for oil, I think you want to give it maybe Monday or Tuesday and see how price behaves around there. But if you get a long trigger, I think it's possibly gonna break this level. Maybe yeah, it gives a small rejection, but once it clears it, then this is support, and I don't know where this could take us, but I'm leaning more bullish than bearish, and I wasn't until I saw this, right? This part of the price action, and this zone here where we consolidated was the low of the week. So yeah, I don't think we're gonna I don't think we're gonna break below here. Maybe a dip here if we get it would be a gift, but you know, I'd much rather look at the weekly open. But the main point is that this is very weird. You know, changing the weekly direction of the candle when you've been bearish all week, especially because when oil was trending, you would see it um, reject from the gap on the first days of the week, then close above it and trend. Something similar here, closes the gap, then resistance, and then reclaims and trends. So maybe I think this is a signal for next week and the next month. So pay attention to oil. Hopefully we can make some money out of this. And I'll be watching. Yeah, I'll be watching this chart. I think it's gonna be one of the best charts to look at. USD CAD I think is still gonna go lower. How much I'm not too sure, but I think it can certainly. Bitcoin, yeah, I mean, I gave a trigger which was break below the trend line and the retest of the bearish engulfing here, daily bearish engulfing candle. So this trade didn't work out even though it's in profit because there was no continuation as there was a lot of chop. So nothing too clear, not a single bit of momentum on this market. So I would avoid this, just like I did with gold. Really, I don't think this is worth anyone's time. And last place, Nikkei, still it's respecting that trend line. So another market that you don't really have to overcomplicate the trigger. Just wait for this, right? Then watch the moving averages lining up. Then that's maybe the signal, right? But if the yen is gonna be intervened, then you know, yen getting stronger is the opposite of this market. So yeah, that's the analysis. So main place, EURUSD and oil, really clearest ones. So I'll be watching those closely and see you guys next week.